Getting ready to step into your career era? Set yourself apart with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Hone your skills with apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and more, powered with the latest in creative AI. Students save over 55% so you can build a portfolio you're proud of. Launch your future with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Visit adobe.com/students to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Welcome back, True Crime Army. I have a little bit of a different episode lined up for you today. I have a special guest, and him and I are going to have a special conversation. I think it's a topic that we should all be talking about, and it's the importance of keeping our kids safe online. Listen, it's back to school season, and this is a really important topic. I am in my 40s. I didn't have a computer in my house until I was in high school. And then it was the dial-up kind that took what feels like now would have felt like 8 years to connect to the internet. But nowadays, our kids come home from school with laptops and iPads issued to them by the school. With the advent of YouTube and Roblox, our kids are more connected than ever before. But how do we as parents keep them safe? Today, I have the pleasure of letting you in on a conversation that I had with Tom Arnold. He's a cybersecurity expert and an educator. He is also the author of a kid's book titled The Digital Detective, where kids can learn the basics of online anonymity and cybersecurity, but not like in a textbook style learning environment. They learn it through fiction and through storytelling, because online, we are all what we say we are, right? So real quick, before I start today, I wanted to tell you about a few news stories that caused me pause, and it really made me want to share this conversation with you. There was an article from 2022 where there was a mom who was extremely furious when she learned that her 8-year-old daughter was playing Roblox when someone asked her for her phone number using the chat feature in the game. The little girl innocently gave this person her phone number because she did have a cell phone by that point, and her and this person began sending messages. It turns out that this person was a grown man, but she didn't know that. Now, the man was asking the little girl to send innocent pictures and videos of herself, and the more pictures she sent, the more he tried to coach her on the different types of pictures and videos that he wanted. Well, thankfully, the mom caught on and stopped the conversation before anything could happen. But stories don't always end that way, right? There is the case of a Delaware man in his 20s who met an 11-year-old online playing Roblox. They communicated more and more until he learned where she lived. He then began to travel from his home in Delaware to New Jersey to watch the little girl from outside of her house. Then one day, the little girl was reported missing. The FBI got involved real quick, and the little girl was found at the man's house, but not before he was able to not only sexually assault the girl, but also record the assault. This case kicked off in 2023, and just last month, the Department of Justice released a press release. The 27-year-old perpetrator was a man named Darius Matty Lewich, who was sentenced to 20 years for coercion and enticement of a minor in that case. I mean, this is a scary, scary world, y'all. And while that child may never be the same because she was clearly abused by this man, she is hopefully in a safe environment now. And wait, just this May, another news story broke, and this one was out of California. A 27-year-old man and a 10-year-old girl met online playing Roblox. After exchanging various messages, the man drove hours to meet the little girl. And by hours, I mean over 4 hours. And did you catch the part where I said she was 10? Okay. So once he met with the girl, she got in the car and he drove the girl to Elk Grove from Taft, California. Her parents reported her missing the following morning, and authorities found the communications and immediately took action. The girl was found 250 miles from her house in a strip mall with the man. After his arrest, he claimed that the 10-year-old told him that she was 18. I mean, okay, so maybe she did say she was 18. That still did not explain how he would not be able to tell she was 10 when he pulled up to pick her up. Anyway, this story goes to show that sometimes kids lie online, putting themselves in situations they might not be able to get out of. So, yes, when I was offered the opportunity to have today's conversation on how to keep my kids safe, I jumped at the opportunity. So, without freaking you out any more than I already have, because, talking about murder is one thing, but talking about safety, especially with our kids, is really, really hard in the digital age. But these are the hard conversations that we have to be having with our kids. All right, True Crime Army, let's get into it.
Military murder is an independent project and is not endorsed by the Department of Defense or any military component. The views expressed are those of the host. The content of this podcast is not meant to be legal or medical advice. Warning, this episode contains graphic details of murder and is not suitable for young listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you so much. I know that my fans are super excited to hear from you today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to write The Digital Detective? So give us all the details.
I would love to. So I have a lot of experience in what would be called the cybersecurity field, over 30 years. So I am an old guy, but I do keep up with it. Currently, I'm teaching in the graduate program of cybersecurity at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I was teaching at the California State University, San Jose State, and specifically their digital evidence program amongst forensic science, which was more leaning towards the law enforcement side of things, basically. But prior to that, I was a policeman many years ago. And I have worked as a chief technology officer in 3 companies. I founded a cybersecurity firm that we did a lot of work with Visa, MasterCard, and everybody in the earliest days. Long ago, when I first got into this field, we did one of the very first websites where you could download and buy software online, and you could get it digitally delivered. Now, this is 1992, 1993 when we did this. And we realized that we were actually delivering more software to fraudulent use of credit cards than we were to real people, which was a real problem for us to have to solve. So that led to, how do you identify who you are online, and do you have the right to use that credit card? Now we're talking 1993, and it comes us right back here to 2025. So in 1998, a gentleman named Peter Steiner did a fabulous piece for the New Yorker, and it was basically, he was a cartoonist, and he did a cartoon, and it showed a picture of a large black dog sitting at a computer screen typing on the keyboard. And the line underneath it was, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. And that still applies, just like it did in 1993 when people were fraudulently using credit cards, to now, when people are trying to trick people online to believing that they're someone that they're not, basically. Mm-hmm. So that's my background. The other part of your question was, how did it lead me to doing The Digital Detective First Intervention, the novel that was released recently? And it's a novel specifically for kids 10 and older. And my intent was really to help educate on the subject of cybersecurity, cybercrime, cyber threats as a whole. And this all started a few years ago when my then 7-year-old grandson was playing a very popular game at the time that's still very popular, which is Roblox. And his parents are both very adept at cybersecurity, and created an environment for the family as a whole where if you were reporting a cybersecurity problem, or you did something wrong, or you downloaded something incorrectly, or just whatever, you wouldn't be punished. And so he came and showed his mom the screen and says, look, I was playing the game, and this other person came up and held up a sign, which is holding a sign up and saying, what's your name? and where do you live, is what the sign said. Now, all the parental controls were on, but this was actually a very frightening experience as a whole. And I realized that maybe having a different approach to trying to describe cybersecurity and cyber safety and cyber hygiene, to try to let kids experience by reading a fun story, that they begin to learn about the troubles that can be caused on the internet as a whole. And that's what really started me down the road of building the series. And the first book, like I said, is out. The second one's hopefully on its way soon, hopefully in October-ish time frame. So anyway, that's the background, is what led me to do the book, why I did it. And it was specifically that one event with my grandson, who at the time was 7 years old, that really was an awakening that said, we need to work harder to educate our kids and educate our families with regards to the problems that can be caused on the internet.
Yes. Okay. So you brought up Roblox, and when you and I had like our pre-brief, which I like to have with anyone who I'm interviewing, I basically was like, hey, I need you to explain what Roblox is, because I am completely oblivious to it. And we also talked about how my now 9-year-old will be like, oh, Mom, everyone's playing Roblox. And I'm like, no, we're not going to play. And then you brought up like the excluding kids, not allowing kids to do things, and how that affects children as well. So first, my question was twofold. It was, can you explain what Roblox is to us parents who are just afraid of it, don't know what it is, or to even parents who do know what it is, kind of, and they just let their kids do whatever they want on there. And then the other part of it, part of the question is, what happens when you exclude your kids from platforms like Roblox? So,
yeah, absolutely. And, they're two very distinct questions, but Roblox as a whole, if you think of it, is really a game development environment. Your kids or whoever online can build a game in Roblox or build a game environment. And then other people, like your kids, can come in and play those games and play inside those environments is what they can do. Okay. So there's thousands of different game environments in there, and they're vastly different. They are ranging from, very simplistic games right on through things that you'd never want your kids to even be near is the challenge, okay?
My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use it if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
So give me an example. When you say this, like what's a simple game look like in Roblox? Like, what are they doing? Are they matching colors? Are they playing memory? Like, what is it?
They may have set up a simple game that says they're building a simple room or a simple environment, and maybe they're, like you said, matching colors, doing things with shapes or whatever. And then it can go to the far intensity of other developed environments, which have been outlawed and why various countries are watching and looking at Roblox, like beating up a homeless person in front of a 7-Eleven is probably the most notable one as far as an environment. So it's that full spectrum that can be in the game itself. And, the computer games have an interesting place in our culture right now, and largely have an interesting place, which I'll make a comment on at the end. Specifically. Now, isolating your kids and saying you can never play Roblox, okay, it's an approach, but it's also a challenge. And I'll give you an example that was provided to me by a parent in Texas when I was speaking down there and talking to me. It says, look, we went through and we said to our kids, no technology. You can't have a phone, no watches. We're not going to have any Apple TVs. We're not going to have any laptops, anything like that. But they're still going to school. And the mom comes to discover that she's actually her son, who's, sub 10 years old. I don't know how old he was actually, had a Facebook page. Well, how did he get a Facebook page? He doesn't have access to anything, technology-wise. It was simple. He used his friends' phones to log in and build his Facebook site. So my point is, kids will eventually find the technology. They will derive a way to reach the technology. And it seems more appropriate to me that it's more of a supervised and shared environment with the parents versus a violation of an absolute ban sort of thing. Unfortunately, with Roblox, when somebody logs in, you can set all the parental controls, which I would strongly recommend to parents. Set all the parental controls on in the tool, but also monitor what your kids are doing with it. It doesn't mean you have to play with them, although that's advisable at the start, but have an understanding that you need to monitor their activity while online. But they also need to tell you that if something strange happens, or they're in a chat session with someone, and it's not just Roblox, it's any game. Mm-hmm. It's especially tough with teenagers, as a good example. Wow. If they're in a chat environment and the discussion leaves the realm of the game itself and goes into anything else, it shouldn't be answered. It's just not open for discussion, is really the position they have to take. Because even if it's a simplistic question, like what's your name, playing under an alias, you haven't logged in with a name. They can't see your name. They can't see your address and all those other things. It may seem very simple to a kid, like they're talking to another 9-year-old or 10-year-old, or for a teenager that they're talking to someone that's, 14 or 15 like them. And they may think, oh, I'm just answering a simple question. But they're giving information about themselves. And that information can be compiled, it can be aggregated, and you can build a profile of the individual. And you can use that profile to have discussions with them, to potentially indoctrinate them into some way that you're thinking, to potentially lead to that meetup that should never happen.
So you're talking about potentially like kids meeting people on Roblox and then actually like meeting someone after school. Live. So you talk about that you've talked to parents and say, hey, at the end of the day, it's easier to talk to your kids about sex than it is to talk to them about cybersecurity.
Yes, that's true. I think a lot of parents feel that way. They feel that their kids have a greater education in the field of technology than they have, and that they're going to somehow stumble over some element of technology, and they're going to look foolish to their kids, or their kids are going to demonstrate or lose faith in what the parents are dealing with. Yeah, that's one of the huge problems that's out there. And that's why I say that it has to be developed as a safe harbor so that there's an open communication and conversation going on. Like, one of the common items that says for prevention, don't share personal information. Well, the definition of personal information is kind of a problem. What is that? What is it to the kid that's being told that? And what does the parent mean by that? So it's going to take, and that's why I said where I draw the line is any question or that would result in an answer that's outside the scope of the game itself is personal information. We're done.
Right.
So if someone's going, do you want to go left or right here as we play this game? Well, I'm going to go left. Okay, fine. That deals with the scope of the game. No problem. Okay. And, what's your favorite food? I'm sorry, that's not in the scope of the game.
Yeah, because you have to think about these games where it's the same thing where you can get little bits of information every single day, and then you can
Right.
definitely have a picture. Hey, what state do you live in? Oh, I live in this state. Oh,
Yeah.
what's the closest city to you? Oh, do you live by a 7-Eleven? Or
Yep.
oh, do you
Yeah,
live
that's
by
right.
so and so school?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. That's
Okay.
exactly where it leads, basically. And the other point that I was going to make is games right now, when it comes to extremism, which is a category of cybercrime, and it's
Mm,
usually lumped in with cyber terror, believe it or not. So it's a very extreme category. It can be, I don't care which side you're on, it can be either, but any extremism. Games are used as a recruiting environment. They're used to indoctrinate people to their thinking, okay, and to bring people into their environment. And it's even been used by organizations like Al Qaeda to utilize games to do that.
wow. That is okay. So I have a 9-year-old and I want to have a conversation with her about cybersecurity. What types of things should I be talking to her about? Like, what would this conversation look like? Pretend I am her and you're my dad. So what would this conversation kind of entail? So my listeners kind of have kind of like a framework or an outline of what this conversation would look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good question. And I would tell you that number one is you're teaching the fact that on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. It works both ways. Nobody knows who you are, and you don't know who they are. And you really can't trust what they tell you. I would lead that into a discussion of two topics. The subject is friends online and what I refer to as online friends.
Yes, tell
When
me
you
more.
have, yeah, when you have friends online, these are people that you absolutely know, neighbors, other kids from school. Okay. Now, when you're in a chat environment or you're in a game and it's only friends online, um, these are, like I said, these are people you know, but you still have to exercise some care because what you don't know is whether or not one of your friends might have lost control of their account, and it could be a dog that's masquerading as one of your friends. That's the problem.
Right.
So I would start by enforcing that. I mean, early on, kids would have LAN parties, local area network parties, where they would come and hook all their machines together and they'd play a game as a group. And as long as they were within their group playing the game, that was friends online.
Mm-hmm.
If their group went into a tournament that had other people in it, now they're dealing with something I call online friends. These online friends are people claiming to be your friend because they're all playing the game with you, but you don't really know them. You have really no idea who they are.
Right.
So if you look at postings to social media for like a teen or postings in chat in a game, okay, uh, you really don't know who all's reading that and who all's responding to that is the point. So
Mm-hmm.
I always distinguish between the two very carefully that says you've got online friends and you've got friends online. Friends online is obviously a bit safer environment. You still have to exercise care. But when you're with online friends, you exercise supreme care. And so I would suggest starting with that conversation and giving them examples of those things
Mm-hmm.
and types of situations, and then working through little hypotheticals. If someone asks this or does this or does this, what do you do? You
Mm-hmm.
know, I
Mm-hmm.
actually think that's probably a better way. Now, at the end of the day, the reason I wrote The Digital Detective was to try to help that out,
Right.
so that they can sort of learn on their own to some extent.
You
Peer
want to
group
give us an
pressure
example
is still
from your
huge.
digital? Oh,
Well,
I'm
the
not sure if you
Digital
heard me.
Detective book is really in the first book here called First Intervention, is about a pair of young kids, both 14 years old, who are fighting cyber terrorism by accident. And in one case, one of the kids, Jason Palmer, who's our hero in the story, is really adept in about computers, technology, and doing things with forensics, if you would. In one chapter, his other friend, Reba, her sister has lost her cell phone, and he uses forensic techniques to locate the phone and discovers that it was taken by somebody who would be considered a friend online from school, because the phone was currently at that person's house. And then looking at the sequence of backups, discovers that a video had been removed. After the phone was stolen, this video was removed. And they look at the video, and it's a video actually of our bad guys having a little meeting on a street corner. And one of the kids is there. And the girl involved takes a video of her friends and this other kid, who also captures the video of these people in the background. And that was why the phone was stolen, basically. That leads us into the cyber terrorism. And so that's an example, all right? It says here you're posting this video, they know you have the video, and now they've stolen your phone to remove that video in this situation, okay? And I show how Jason uses techniques to discover that.
That is deep. That's deep.
That's a very simplistic one. It's the second chapter of the book, or third, actually. So it's a very simplistic one. But that's what I'm doing inside the story. And so it's a story that's fun to read. It's compelling, at least that I've been heard. It's got very good reviews on Amazon. And, it helps the parents to a large extent begin to have the conversations with their kids.
Yeah. With regards to everything that we're talking about, how do you help children set these boundaries in fast-paced environments like group chats or live multiplayer games?
Yeah, this is a very tough one. Largely, it's left up to trusting that the kids have a good enough solid background with regards to themselves, trust in themselves specifically, and willingness not to totally succumb to what might feel like peer pressure online is actually the big item in there. Because, as I said, understanding friends online, somebody else could be masquerading as one of those friends. You may think it's Mary, but it's not. It's somebody else that's actually in there, because you really don't know specifically. So they may have their guards down a little bit in that situation of a chat, but they still have to be cautious. And they've got to be cautious to constantly think to themselves, is somebody asking something, or are we talking about something that might be really personal? And, you always want, kids at that age always want to trust their other friends. But as we all know, as time goes by, opinions and friends can change. And we see this in one of the cybercrime categories now called cyberbullying and harassment.
Oh my goodness. I literally just wrote that down because I wanted you to talk about that subject. Let's hear it. Yeah. I'm so interested in this. Okay, go.
Yeah. So, cyberbullying, harassment, and cyber stalking, they're a typology or category of cybercrime. A lot of people hear cybercrime, they think of hackers. No. There's many others, and cyberbullying is one of them. And this is a situation where, as we all know, friendships evolve over time. And at this same time, what's going on with the kids is their brains are developing, they're learning to experience things, they're experiencing more things, they're experiencing emotions that they may not have had necessarily in the past. And conditions with friends can actually change. And we're hoping in this situation there's not enough information that's crossed under these chat bridges that provides information that someone can use to bully another person. One of the more famous cases was where two friends had a breakup, and unfortunately the one friend's mom sort of took over the account and started bullying the other friend online. Now, this led to a suicide, which was terrible. Okay,
I recall this case. Yes.
And these sorts of things. If somebody's getting bullied, or they believe someone's bullying them, or they're threatening them with some sort of extortion that says, "I'm going to tell somebody about this, and they're going to believe this," it's time that we all hope as parents that the safe harbor that we've built around cybersecurity now works, because we want the kid to come talk to us. We're not going to react with anger to the kid. We're not going to ground them. We're not going to take all their stuff. Okay. It's now time for the parent to work directly with the kid on solving this. And in most cyberbullying situations, when bullying is occurring, it's time for law enforcement to become involved in most cases that I've seen. A lot of times the situation is sort of handled and it begins to escalate weirdly. And the reality is it's kind of time for law enforcement to become involved. All right. And it's also kind of time for school officials to become involved as well, because there isn't really any boundaries. On the internet, there's no geopolitical boundaries at all. This could be happening in school. It could be subject to other things that are occurring with the kid in school, and it's continuing on online, and the two are connected. Don't know if you follow me. So it's time to work through those sorts of resources as parents are concerned to deal with that. Harassment is clearly another one. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog, right? You're sort of anonymous, okay? And you begin to see things like sexual harassment. You begin to see all kinds of things that begin to happen. Because a lot of times the bad guys, or the bad actors, the perpetrator, let's call them that, actually think that they're totally anonymous, but they're really maybe not. And a lot of these cases can be followed up in harassment situations. Now, that could be a corporate environment, and the human resources department is going to use forensics people to follow up to find out who's committing this harassment of whatever it is. All right. And, it is possible to actually attribute who's doing this, okay, and to take action against them. It is very possible. Cyber stalking is another one. Cyber stalking is an extension of stalking, and we all kind of know what that is, right? You get the creepy person who's following you around and showing up at places. You get them installing either various forms of malicious software or trackers on devices so that they can identify where you're at.
Right.
Those types of things. Those are all the evil things that happen in this category of cybercrime. And that's why I said a lot of times the victim may not be capable of dealing with the situation on their own, and they need to seek help. Now, I'm not trying to create fear. Let me qualify this. I'm primarily an educator. I'm not creating fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Okay? Please, no. These are all just open conversations that you and I are having right now on this subject, because a lot of these topics are very scary.
So for cyberbullying, I think it's great. You said getting teachers and the school involved potentially. Also, of course, I think you try, depending on the severity of it, you try and get the other child's parents involved, right? If they are amenable to it.
If you can attribute it,
if you can't,
you may not be able to. It is difficult, but you need help in that. Yes, you can get the school officials involved, but largely law enforcement is the one with the capabilities to sort of figure out what's going on. Largely, if they'll take the case as a good example, they can do things on the phones to figure out what's happening, where's the communications coming from, when is it coming from, what is the timeliness of the phone conversations, and begin to work on tracing that back.
Oh, that's right. And we're talking if you don't know who the other person is.
If you don't know. Yeah, that's
I was talking about more about
which is more like stalking actually than it is just bullying, but yes.
Right.
In bullying cases, 90+%, you know who the bully. Well, you have the person's in your circle of friends. Is my point.
Right. Yeah, that's why I was thinking. A first line of defense, the parent of that person, and teachers, and then law enforcement. But yes, you're talking about if we don't know who that person is, then law enforcement, of course, would be able to figure out who they. So this leads me to my next question. Are there any apps parental controls or browser extensions that we need to be aware of that you would recommend for parents who want to take that extra security step for their kids when, they're going to line them up with an iPad or an iPhone or a MacBook or whatever it is? Like what? Because I hear so many different things. And so I always think like oh my gosh, when my kids get a cell phone, like I need to know every single text message you're sending because everything's appropriate. But what are the apps that we need to know about that my listeners know about?
The apps themselves evolve rapidly, largely. And the parental controls, a lot depends on the age group of the kids you're dealing with and the amount of access they actually have. Obviously, gateways with regards to limiting access to certain apps. If a kid's going to have an iPad and they're in that 9 to say 12 range, or 9 maybe even to 13, should they actually have access to various chat apps inside their device? Now, at some point, they're going to derive that access anyway, and we have to hope that they're learning enough on the way in before they become 14 or 15-year-olds and begin actually using the variety of apps. If the relationship with the parents are good enough, the type of app that the kid is using is very important. Just messaging alone, there's a ton that range from Instagram through iMessage, through Telegram, tons of apps in there. And so having the control on the device that doesn't allow the youngster or the child to just arbitrarily pick one and put one in, having that level of access, remembering that we have a concept that's actually really, really old. And that is, when you have a computing device in front of you and you're using it on a daily basis, should you actually be the administrator using that computer? The answer is no. Okay. Even the owner of the machine should just have a normal user account. It should require them to go through special hoops to alter that system. That is one of the biggest items against adults, companies, everybody else, okay, that's used against us to install malicious software. But forgetting malicious software for a minute, you just having the ability to arbitrarily say, you know what, I want to put X on my machine. I want to put Instagram on my machine. I want to, because my friends have this and they're telling me about it, okay? No. So the parents maintaining the administrative control of the device is really important. And as a side note, parents that have their own computing devices that they have administrative access to, that they should change so that they're only using a normal user account so that something cannot be maliciously worked against them. It's the number one way the bad guys and the hackers actually love to work, is exactly that. Okay, so that's one of the big things I would stress, is just sort of a general hygiene with the device itself. As far as tools that deal with parental controls and monitoring the device, there are varieties of tools out there that can be utilized. And when it comes to games, that's a category where the parental controls need to be understood. So the kid comes and says, hey, I want to do this game. I want to install this game on my machine. Okay, we'll look at it. All right. And even though you're extremely busy, you're having to do all sorts of things during your day, but taking the time to look at the game, figuring out what the parental controls are, what its current state in the world is before you do it, and having a plan for that installation is probably a good thing to do. And then you're supervising that installation, or you're performing that installation on the kid's machine, not the kid.
Yes. So my kids, I want to just share, that's actually really good. My kids have iPads. I mean, even the 4-year-old has her own iPad, but every iPad is set up to whatever their age is. And I set it up so that they cannot download any app without me getting a notification on my phone. And my kids hate it because they'll be at their dad's house and I'll still get, he can't access it. Dad can't access it. So
Tough
they
beans.
have to get from me. And so sometimes the dad will be like, oh yeah, just, ask for permission from your mom. And then I get it. And then I look at the game and I'm like, this is for 12-year-olds. And then, cause like it'll tell you, the app store will tell you, and it's like 12-year-old, 12 plus, whatever. And then the bottom will be like, oh, like in the game, there's like violence and language and all this other stuff. And I'll have to call him and be like, no, I'm not letting her download that on her iPad because of all these things. And he'll be like, oh, I didn't even notice that. I didn't even know that. And sometimes I do think that some of the games are like, it'll be Tetris and it'll be like for 15 and over. And I'll like look at it and I'm like, how does Tetris have violence? Like, that's just an example. So sometimes I will look at it and I'm like, okay, I don't think that we can get on here with that, but I'll let her download it and then I'll supervise. But a lot of the games, it's not even the game. It's just that the chat feature that you're talking about, like how you can actually get online and play with other people. And then that's where it gets, to the rating.
That's where it gets dicey.
Yeah, so that's actually really good. I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that's a really good thing. I need to know. Is there any app that you can like mirror your kids like devices whenever they get a phone or something, so that you can basically mirror it and get the same information on your device so you know exactly?
Yeah, there are some apps and techniques for actually doing that. From what I've in my brief view of some of the applications, depending on the level of access the kid has and what they're trying to do with it, there's ways they can get around it. So, as a good example, if you've authorized them to use a certain chat tool because maybe the groups at school, especially for a teenager, the groups at school are all using, and it could even be recommended by the school to use a specific app, and they're going to do a group project together as a good example. So there's 5 kids, let's say, that are getting together and doing this group project. Some of these tools allow for voice communications to take place to arbitrary numbers. And the tool itself does the voice communications. So you're not entirely insured on, hey, I'm installing this chat app, and all they're going to be able to do is to type questions and share papers and do schooly stuff. That may not be true. And so even though you may have mirrored things on their phone, you may not suddenly be able to mirror that.
Gotcha.
You got it? That's the challenge. So, yeah, there are applications out there that allow you to have sort of a monitoring visibility to what's going on the mobile device. And there's an entire sort of variety of them out there. But, just be aware that a lot of these tools have limits. They may not work in certain cases, which brings us all the way back to the beginning. That says, if you've got that cybersecurity safe harbor, if you've got that trust with the kids, you're having this communications with the kids, and they're kind of listening to you. And yes, are they going to stub their toe and do something that, okay, suddenly a bully appears and is bullying your daughter, and she's 14 years old now or 15 years old now, and that she's getting bullied. She could have done everything right, okay, and it's just happening. But she has to have that trust to go, hey, mom, this is happening to me and it's really bad. I'm upset. I'm crying. Da. Okay, time to take action.
Yeah. So this leads me to kind of like, as our conversation comes to an end, final thoughts. I'm going to ask this question, but I think I know the answer to it. And I circled it real big here, the safe harbor for kids, right? That's so important, not only for our conversation on like our digital fingerprint or thumbprint or whatever we want to say, also just in general, right? In general, when it comes to crimes or whatever, like I always tell my kids, whatever happens in life, you bring it to mom and I will take, like, I can help you through any issue you might have, even if you feel like you cannot, even if you feel there is no, and like, I can help you. I basically always joke, I'm like, I'm mom, I can figure anything out, right? So my question was going to be, what's the one thing you wish every parent understood about their kids' digital life? And I think you're going to say that they need to start early and start with the safe harbor. But go ahead.
Well, you're actually very close and very correct. And it's not just the safe harbor, but it's the ongoing sort of communications. And it is very, very difficult in emotional situations to keep one's cool. All right.
Mm, mm.
If the parent stays cooler than the kid, we're going to win. If the parent has escalated beyond the level of the kid, we're going to lose, is my belief. And so it is starting young and having that conversation and reinforcing the safe harbor. I will tell you that I have a couple of friends who sort of continued this on. And even though their daughter has graduated college, she's 24 years old, and she's moved off to Chicago, to a big city, she still believes the safe harbor exists. I can go back and talk to mom and dad about this. And that's a big win in my book.
Yeah.
Because she's now going to be experiencing more. She's going to be expected to handle things on her own. And here we go. She can be victimized too. So I think that's absolutely the big part. And yes, it's the safe harbor is what I would put that in there.
For listeners who are ready to start the conversation with their kids at home, let's say today, what's one action item that they can take? Like it's just simple today. What can they do today?
Very simple thing. And I've seen this many times and, just sort of witnessed it and talked to people. And I would say when the kids are using their technology or whatever, play with them. Just have that initial sort of, hey, I want to play too, sort of shot. Show me how you do that. I mean, that's a really good line that works, that begins to establish that. And that to me is the opener. And yeah, okay, you're manipulating the kids. Fine. Okay, fine. That's your opener. That gets you in.
But what? At the end of the day, kids just want attention. Like kids want your attention, and I feel like a lot of the kids that get really into the games and stuff, they're basically kids who are like, well, my parents are busy, so I'm gonna go to the online community, which is what we do too, right? We're like, oh, we just want to get zoned out, whether our loved ones are busy or whatever. We just want to get zoned out into something. And I think that's great. That's actually like really awesome. I needed that. I needed to hear that today. All right, is there anything else that you wanted to let?
No, I think we've covered it. And I really appreciate having this conversation with you. I hope your listeners enjoy it. And if they have questions or comments, you can forward those, I'd appreciate it.
That's awesome. So where can our listeners find The Digital Detective and follow along with your work? This is a series, right? So you came out with the first, and then you said you have a second one coming out later. So tell us where we can find it.
So I would tell you that there is a website. Yes, website. And think of it the way Apple names things. So it's iDigital Detective, one word, iDigital Detective. And that's the site. And that will allow people to sort of stay on the radar.
Okay, awesome. And then can they get the book on there as well? Or can they go on Amazon as well?
That'll lead them to either Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Either one of those two.
Gotcha. I am so excited that we were able to have this conversation and we made it happen pretty quickly. I am so excited. I am very, very, very excited. I have my copy of The Digital Detective and I'm going to give it off to my 9-year-old. Maybe she's a little bit on the younger side. She's really advanced. So I'm excited for her to pick it up. And I want to say thank you so much to my listeners. I call them the True Crime Army for listening to my conversation with you, Tom. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sending over the PDF of The Digital Detective and also for joining me. And, at the end of the day, just for creating The Digital Detective, which is a tool that empowers parents and kids to face the digital world with confidence instead of fear, which is one of the things that I need to kind of get over. But I'm also a true crime, storyteller. So I have a little bit of a hard time giving up that, giving that. But thank you so much for that. Okay. Now to my listeners, if this conversation got you thinking, I hope that it also got you talking, because that's the entire point of this, right? Open dialogue with our kids is the most powerful cybersecurity tool that we have. You can find The Digital Detective. Like he said, go to idigitaldetective.com. You can also find it on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. And I will definitely be linking that website in the show notes. If you found this episode helpful, do me a favor, share it with a fellow parent, leave a review, or just tag me on Instagram at Military Murder Podcast and let me know your biggest takeaway. As always, remember, you never know what someone is capable of, so remain vigilant always. You have a fabulous week, and I'll keep digging to bring you another military true crime story next time.
Mama's working on her podcast. I don't want to.